guys, I did a little bit of research because, I like to talk about history and the significance of what you're about to see. The years are late 1800 Victorian time in France. A lot of things happen around that time. First of all, it's the Second Empire, so this is under Napoleon III. And in England would have been Queen Victoria. Hence Victorian times, Sophia. There was a lot of changes around the world. I mean, it's the beginning of the Industrial Revolution. The railroad is booming, and a lot of things are changing. Modernization as we know it. One of the biggest things that happened was in Paris in particular, where Paris was completely rehabbed. And I mean rehabbed. Around that time, and very famous guy, the Baron Haussmann, and I'm putting pictures so you get an idea of who they are. Maybe I should close the window. Hold on. Sorry, I had to close the window. We have, it's late afternoon, but we have landscapers still mowing lawns and whatnot. Okay, so the Baron Haussmann was hired by Napoleon III to rehab Paris, and what they wanted to do was thoroughfare, big avenues, you name it. The problem with Paris is that it started at the center, at l'Île de la Cité, where Notre Dame is, and it kind of like built outwards, but it was just not making any sense. So there was a lot of little alleys and houses on top of the other, very medieval in terms of setup. And it was getting congested. There was diseases, poverty, people who still didn't have running water, no electricity. It was a hot mess, okay? So modernization of France required a lot of that infrastructure to be installed or rehabbed. And the Baron Haussmann and Napoleon III were the ones who really initiated the whole thing. And what they did really was level Paris. Entire neighborhoods got leveled so that they could build huge thoroughfare. The Arc de Triomphe was built with the star, again putting pictures, the star pattern with all the avenues going out of it. The Great Boulevard with all the department stores were created around that time. A huge building, apartment buildings. The typical Parisian building that you see a lot in videos, those big white facade with the cast iron balconies and then the rounded slate top with all the little windows for the servant quarters. These were all built around that time. So what does it have to do with the Jacquemart-Andre Museum? Okay, so let's talk about Mr. André. That would be Édouard. He was born, let me make sure I got this right. He was born in 1833 from a Protestant family. They were very rich. And we're talking richer than God, okay? These guys were a family of bankers. They financed all of the new infrastructure in France, not just in Paris. We're talking the railroads, electricity, running water, aqueducts, canals, thoroughfares, shipping industry, you name it. And they were partnered with the Rothschilds as a family. So that gives you an idea of the kind of money we're talking about. So our buddy, Édouard-Andre, is born in 1833, and like most kids coming out of very, very rich family, there was only kind of like two options for him. Is either you go into politics and you become president of France, or you are an art collector and a philanthropist. So he started in politics. He went to Saint-Cyr, and here he is in his Imperial Guard uniform. Saint-Cyr is the equivalent of West Point. So he goes to Saint-Cyr. It's like, if you go there, you're somebody in France. So he went there, military school and administration. And he started like dabbing around a little bit with politics, but he was very disappointed. Imagine that. So he decided, oh well, Let me be an art collector then. So when he was barely 27 years old, he starts collecting stuff. So he's collecting porcelain and he's collecting ceramics, pottery, things like this. And then he started falling in love with paintings and started collecting those. And around the time that Paris was being rehabbed, because again, Napoleon III asked Haussmann to create the Great Boulevard, the Opera, and all of this stuff, as they were leveling Paris, a lot of empty lots opened up. And right along the Haussmann Boulevard near the Arc de Triomphe was a big lot that he decided to purchase with the intention of building himself a mansion. So at 27 years old, he has the house started. And the house was built between 1869 and 1876. Beautiful home, typical of the architecture of the time. And you'll see when we get there how it's set up, where you have a grand entrance for the guests, and then you have a separate entrance for the people who live there. So the guy who built the property actually was very jealous of, his name was Parent, I believe. He was very jealous of the guy who got the contract to build the opera. So he wanted to do the house in a similar style, and you'll see that the staircase in the Jacquemart-Andre residence actually echoes the staircase in the opera. He did that on purpose. I guess that was the original troll. I'm not sure. So in 1872, he decides that he wants to have a portrait done of himself. And he asks around, and there's this one lady who apparently is an artist. Her name is Nelly Jacquemart. And she came from a pretty modest family, still bourgeois, but modest compared to, his fortune. But built a reputation amongst high-end society in Paris as being a very good and talented portraitist. So he meets with her and she does this portrait of him, and here she is. That's Nelly Jacquemart. They're both almost in their 40s by the time they get married. So he proposed to her. It was very clear from the beginning that they were not going to have children. But within a year of their marriage, I guess because of her background in art and history, she convinced him to travel to Italy. And so they go there and they go to Istanbul and all of that area, surrounding the Mediterranean Sea. And they purchase a lot of art, a lot of art when they're in Italy. And they start collecting, like being serious collectors. So every penny he makes really goes into his residence or his art collection. So they purchase some very famous people, medieval artists, Renaissance artists like Bellini, who has a special exhibit in that particular museum. And they just live a grandiose life. They have a soirée in their home, and it's really to showcase their artwork. And then, 10 years later, he dies very suddenly. Possibly a heart attack. I couldn't actually find a cause of death on André, on Édouard André. But the interesting thing is, out of the blue, this pair shows up. They are cousins and they don't have kids, right? Édouard and Nelly. So these two decide that they're going to sue her for his fortune. They want the money back. They want the house, they want the art, they want all of the money back because she did not produce an heir. Unbeknownst to them, it goes into trial. Unbeknownst to them, he had written a will in which he left her everything, all of it. But she's then accused of falsifying the will. It goes on for years. Eventually, in 1902, she wins and she's able to keep all of her fortune and the house and the art collection, you name it. So what does she do? She goes on a world tour And she goes to China, she goes to India, she goes to Japan, she goes to England, of course she goes to Italy, and she buys even more art than they could possibly fit in that one house. And she dies in 1912, I believe. Yep. So she dies in 1912. She was born in 1841. So you do the math. She was pretty old, actually, considering the time. So she leaves everything, all of it, to the French National Art Endowment Institute, something like that. It's the Institut de France. It's basically like the Smithsonian in France. And she was very specific. Not only was she very specific, but she had a whole file system with drawings in which she told them which painting would go where, in which room, and that she was leaving everything to them under the sole condition that they would, within 1 year, open the entire residence as a public museum. She had every room mapped out, where the furniture needed to go, where the artwork needed to go. All they had to do was walk in, move the stuff, and hang the banner open for visits. They opened in 1913 as a grand opening a year later, as per her testament, and it's been a success ever since. Actually, it was inaugurated by the French president at the time. Raymond Poincaré was his name. So the museum has been open ever since, and they do reserve a couple of rooms to special exhibits, one of them being the Bellini exhibit that we just saw that day when we visited. So let's dive into it. We're going to visit the Jacquemart-Andre museum. They were a very interesting couple, obviously very, very rich. He kept, the family fortune. He kept doing a lot of investments. And he was part of the people who financed the entire project of rehabbing Paris under Napoleon III and Baron Haussmann. So these are people who were, I guess, the equivalent of the Rockefellers or the JP Morgan folks, it's around that time anyway. So, I mean, it's amazing what they were able to put together in such a short period of time, because their collection was really accumulated over a period of maybe 12, 15 years. And you can rent the salons to do weddings. I don't want to know the price of that. And there's also a tea salon in the dining room. We didn't go because we knew it was going to be too expensive. But we didn't go there, and you'll see we went to lunch somewhere else. So once we were done with the exhibit, and it was fabulous, by the way, and there's just no way I can show you all of it, so it's going a little fast, I have to admit. But I'm doing my best in trying to showcasing like the big highlights. And I did a little slideshow just for the Bellini exhibit, because I have never seen so many Madonna and Child paintings in my life all in one room. It was really, really special, and the artworks are beautiful. And you will see in the early, if you know a little bit about art history, portraits at the time were mostly religious. They were portraits of dignitaries and popes and dukes and kings and all of that. But in the 1300, 1200 and 1300, the portraits were always against a dark green or dark black background. And you'll see that Bellini was one of the first people to actually do portraits with a landscape in the back. And when you think about the Mona Lisa by Da Vinci, you'll see that it's a landscape in the back. That's around that time period. What Da Vinci's a little bit after. But he was following the Italian school by which they moved away from that dark background and started doing landscapes, opening up the space behind the person, making them look like they were, the portrait was done in a live setting. So I thought that was interesting in terms of looking at the evolution of paintings and portraits in particular, which happen to be my favorite type of paintings. I love portraits. I don't know why. I just love them. So once we were done with the museum, we walked to the department stores. Initially, I wanted to show you both Le Printemps and Les Galeries Lafayette. It was started to get a little late. It was around 6 o'clock in the afternoon, so we only did Les Galeries Lafayette. I just wanted to show you the main cupola, the central area of the store, because it's like 6-7 floors high with a huge stained glass window dome on top. And that's the store where I used to work. And right across the street is the Lafayette Gourmet, and that's the one that has all the high-end food. So I'm showing you some of that as well. And then it stops there. Hello everyone. It's a little bit late in the morning, almost noon. Spend the morning with mom chatting in her apartment. Oh, you guys got to see the cakes. Hold on. Pardon me for interrupting our program. I needed to show you a fraisier. This is one of my favorite French cake. It's basically a pound cake with cream and strawberries on it. Okay, so that was fraisier. And then you see the other cakes over there. So it's Tuesday. You like the cakes, huh? It's Tuesday and we have 3 things to do today. We're going to the Jacquemart-Andre Museum, which was a private residence of 2 collectors. And they have a Giovanni Bellini exhibit right now. We're not really interested in that. We'll still look at it. I really want to see the interior of the private residence. It's on the Haussmann Boulevard. That's the same boulevard that has all of the department stores. So once we're done with that, we'll go towards La Madeleine and look at computers. And then we're doing the department stores today. So you're going to see Le Printemps and the Galerie Lafayette and the Galerie Lafayette Gourmet, which is the high-end food store where they have it all. I'm looking for tea. That's really what I want to buy because it's easy to get it over there. But anyway, so we're walking to the subway, and so you're going to see La Madeleine Church, not the inside. I've shown that in other videos, and you'll see the museum and the department stores today. So we'll see you in a bit. So we just arrived at La Madeleine Church, and of course it's all scaffolded. Can't even see the front of it because they're restoring everything for the Olympics. But you may be interested in fashion.
pas fait volontairement, mais voilà. Et voilà, bon appétit.
Merci monsieur.
Oui.
Le chocolat Pierre Hermé.
10 sur 12 euros le gâteau.
Oui, mais attention, c'est du Pierre Hermé, c'est délicieux. Amour, bonjour. Bonjour. Ah oui, bah dis donc. Oui, mais une fois qu'il est glacé, tu t'en fous.
Montre les prix si tu peux rattraper le prix en bas. Dis-lui que sa grand-mère lui envoie.
Okay, so that was the Jacquemart-Andre Museum, and I hope you enjoyed that. It was really beautiful. The Winter Garden is amazing. Most of the artwork, obviously, is all very religious. She was a Catholic, he was Protestant, so I guess the whole idea of the Madonna with child and collecting those was coming from her. More so than him, but as an art collector, I guess he welcomed every opportunity. It's very difficult for me to explain what was going on in the museum because I'm not really familiar with this type of work, but I can tell you that the house itself is absolutely fabulous. I love the apartments, and I'm only showing you her bedroom, his bedroom, and their bathroom and the antichambre. That was basically the room where they would meet in the evening and play, you know, card games, whatever, or, you know, got in the mood. We'll leave it at that. Here are pictures of other rooms in the house. There's the living rooms and the music rooms and salons, you name it, and the library. So the house itself is really, really big. And of course, there's all of the servant headquarters and everything. You don't get to see the kitchen. But anyway, we enjoyed the tour, and we didn't even know this particular museum existed, and we lived in Paris for quite some time. I mean, Mom obviously longer than me, but we had no idea it existed. So think about all of the off-beaten path places you could go to in Paris. You don't have to do the touristy stuff. There barely was anyone in the museum. You saw that there was, you know, mostly empty rooms, which was great. I think it's the best way to see museums. You don't feel rushed. But anyway, I would recommend you go if you get a chance. It was really interesting.